This is the 2022 M2 MacBook Air. How does it perform 2 years later? Let's find out. This computer display was 13.6-inch liquid retina display, 2560 by 1664 resolution with 500 nits of brightness. Now the display in 2024 is still a good display. It's not an OLED display. Apple calls it a liquid retina display, which is just an IPS LCD panel, but it's not OLED. It has LED backlighting. Now I'm not a trained eye, but the screen looks really good still. For anything that you need to get done, if you're working on Photoshop, Final Cut, looking at pictures, scrolling the web, watching movies, whatever you're doing, it still looks good today in 2024. The display is not a problem. It holds up, still beautiful as ever. It's a great display. Now their processor is just Apple's M2 chip. Just Apple's M2 chip. It's Apple's M2 chip, which is a successor to the M1 chip. Now, if you have an M1 MacBook, there's really no processing reason for you to upgrade to the M2 chip because the M2 chip is just a slight spec bump between the M1 and the M2. But if you never had any of the Apple's chip and you still have the Intel-based MacBooks, yes, going from an Intel base to M2 is the move. But an M2 chip has 4 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. If you don't have real heavy workloads, like if you're not consistently having different windows open in Photoshop or working with efficiency heavy apps like DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut Pro, the apps like that real pros use, then this processor is not going to give you any problems, especially 2 years later. It's not going to give you any problems. What I personally use this laptop for, I make YouTube videos. I use Photoshop. I use Lightroom. I use DaVinci Resolve. I do my podcast on there. I really have no problems doing it. With a video like this, about 10 minutes, 12 minutes, something like that. It might be even shorter, who knows. But it only takes DaVinci Resolve about 11 minutes to do it. To me, that's not a problem. Some people want it done in 2 minutes. Cool. But for this laptop and what I need it for, it's never a problem for me. So I think the processing power 2 years later is excellent. I have the base model 256 gigabyte SSD, which is fine for me because I subscribe to Apple's iCloud. I subscribe to the 2 terabyte version, which is $9.99, or the 1 terabyte version. I can't remember, but I have 1 or 2 terabytes of iCloud storage, so all of my files automatically upload to the cloud, so my SSD is not really full at all. So I have no performance problem coming from the storage end. The battery life on this MacBook never gives me a problem. I'm mostly connected to the cord when I'm doing all of my editing and filming and all that stuff. I'm mostly connected to the cable that it comes with. Now, if you're using this laptop on the go, it's quoted to give you 18 hours of battery life, which it does not. It gives you about 12 to 16 hours of battery life depending on what you're doing. If you're very performance heavy and CPU heavy using these big apps, you're not going to get that. You're probably going to get around 6 to 8 hours of battery life, especially 2 years later. These battery capacity is not at 100% anymore. This laptop has all the features that you would want it to have from a MacBook. It has a Magic Keyboard with Touch ID, Force Touch Trackpad, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.0. It has all the bells and whistles that you would ever need it for. I personally love the Touch ID. Sometimes it's a little wonky because you have to enter your password before you can do the Touch ID. And I haven't figured out when it decides to do it and when it doesn't. I can open it up, use my finger, and then sometimes I open it up, I have to put in my password. That's a little bit weird to me, but it works when it needs to work. Now, the real kicker for this laptop for me when I bought it, the MSRP was $1,200. It was $11.99 to get this laptop. But I got it for a steal because the way I look for technology, I rarely buy new technology. I always buy it slightly used because the price is always going to come down, but it's going to work pretty much the same way. What I personally did, I went to Best Buy, and Best Buy has this option. It's called a open box. And with the open box program, basically what it is, if somebody buys a piece of technology and they decide they don't like it, they send it back. Now it's an open box. So what they do, they drop the price significantly and they resell it back to you, but it's only a slightly used item. I got this MacBook for $764. Now, if you know Apple, you know that's a steal because Apple wants to charge you $2,000 for a polishing cloth. You could always go for the M1 MacBook Air, which is, I think now they're selling it in Walmart for about $600 to $700. But the kicker for me with this M2 MacBook is from the M1 to the M2, they upgraded the design of the laptop. The design from the M1 and M2 is different now. The M1 still had the traditional slant from the MacBook Air, from the original MacBook Air, where it started with the thick at the hinges and then it gradually came down to a little thin piece at the end. when they introduced the M2 in 2022, they fully redesigned the MacBook Air to match its big brother, the MacBook Pro. So it has a sleek design all the way around. Everything is uniform. It's just a nice design. And design goes a long way when you're purchasing something because you have to look at it first. I got my MacBook Air in the midnight color because black is awesome. It's the best color to get for technology. You can barely see anything. It is a fingerprint magnet, but it still looks good. This laptop is the best laptop for your bang for your buck. It's the M2 2022 MacBook Air. You can get it for sub $800. It's going to do everything you need it to do. It looks good. It performs good. It doesn't break your budget, and you can have it for years. It's the neglected little brother that turns out to be a doctor at the end of the day. If you're thinking about buying the M2 MacBook Air, get it. It's worth the price. If you're coming from an old laptop, even if you don't want to get the new M3 versions, they haven't released the M4 yet, only for iPad for some weird reason. But if you're looking to get a laptop and you don't want the low-end M1 old design, and you don't want to pay the big bucks for the new M3, M2 is the perfect middle ground that won't break the bank, and it'll be worth your time. Hey, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up for me. If you really like it, subscribe. Let me know down in the comments what more tech you want to see, what's more old stuff you want me to review, and I got y'all. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Peace.